Welcome to the very first episode of Floridian Tales, a new series I am going to start in hopes to help me lead to Florida and maybe lead to some cool experiences while I am there, because the more I am doing from my computer researching and whatnot up in Massachusetts, the more I am being blown away by what happened in Florida at some point in the history of it, which just seems remarkable. Because as you see a map, you see it's just that peninsula right at the bottom of the United States, and there is no way that it was not known to the ancient peoples. It is just a paradise. The weather, the fish, the water, the fountains, which you're going to see in this first reading, and much more. Just look at this place. There is no way that this place was as uninhabited as they claim it to be until the late 1800s, when they started packing us in, us humans and people of the modern era. But there is something definitely crazy, because as I live in Massachusetts, we have all these old buildings from like 1600s, supposedly, and all over the place. There's just all these ancient structures, but it's a different type of ancient culture that was around Florida. And I'm also convinced that if you were to go underwater about 2 miles out from the current seashores, I think you'd find civilizations all over the underwater coast. In the canals, who made those? They are precise, they are perfect. There are so many secrets in Florida I hope to uncover in Floridian Tales, kind of like we're doing with Tartarian Tales. And then when I hopefully get down there, we can do some boots on the ground stuff and find some excellent treasures. And I'll keep learning more from the locals, like I always do. I love learning. I'll never learn enough. You can't. It's just great too. And so here we go. This world is packed with stuff for us. So let's try this little episode of Floridian Tales, and let me know if I should keep going, because I think I've got some others in plans. So this was actually one of the books I used for one of my past Tartarian episodes, I think 56. So definitely check it out. A lot of great stuff. This guy traveled all over the world. Marseille is where he came from, or Versailles, and he just went nuts. Vincent LeBlanc, Vincent the White. So those are the 3 pages I'm going to read here, and here we go. We'll talk about it at the end and throughout. Chapter 7, of Virginia in Florida. So there's a little bit of Virginia in there. But Fountains of Youth, Dangerous Love. So on the south and east of all these parts lies Virginia, discovered by Sir Walter Raleigh in the English, and Florida, first found by Sebastian Cabot, an English navigator in the year 1496. Yeah, sure. As he looked for another matter. That's always the way. And more perfectly afterwards discovered by John Ponce de Leons, who so christened it because he arrived on Palm Sunday, in French called Flower Sunday, or else because he found the land fragrant and spread with flowers. This is a country of wide circuit towards 34 degrees, having on the east the channel of Bahama and the Lucas in Virginia, on the west Mexico and the Gulf Panuco, on the south it looks upon Cuba or Yucatan, and on the side extends above 200 leagues to the 24th degree. On the north lies Canada, New France, and the Annares towards this point or tongue of land in form of an isthmus. So it's just very interesting the way that they refer to all that land from Florida to Canada as just like a hop skip away, like it's all very close. That makes me think they knew of much more land. It always does. But here we go. 'Tis dangerous sailing for the opposite winds and currents of water. The natives are strong and turbulent, eat their enemies of war, but their friends and confederates never, not for any extremity. The men eradicate their beards to appear more lovely and pleasing to the women, pierce their nose and ears, and hang in rings and jewels. They marry not till 40 years of age, and the woman 25, holding that the children will be more robustious. Women before matrimony observe not chastity and without dishonor, but after marriage they will forfeit life as soon as their fidelity. North, they border on the Aunares, Aunares, and beyond them the Abardaos, a cruel and wicked people, continually in war, and use 1,000 subtleties to ensnare their enemies, but especially by night, first laying their engines or caltrops, then given the alarm, and seem to fly, so the enemy pursuing are often taken in these traps, as they likewise take wild beasts, as they, on the other side, make concealed pits for them to fall in. Interesting what the engine part is. But there are also the Yagares, or Fagares, people so swift they boast they can take a deer in plain running. And indeed, the deer there are not so wild, for they feed in fields and herds like cows, whereof they make their ordinary sustenance. Ponce de Leon says he sent one of these people with a letter and some provision on his company, and in a few hours he went and came 30 leagues. They are clothed with skins of beasts, but chiefly deer, which they dress very artificially. Then there are the Apalchin and Chahamo, people entirely barbarous and brutish, who adore and sacrifice to devils that appear to them in diverse forms. The whole country abounds in all commodities, as flesh of all sorts, and fish, and they say there are mines of gold and silver, which I'm going to get into soon in another video, whereof they make no great account. They have a king whom sour of the principal amongst them bear in the skin of a saliabe, a beast like a hart, H-A-R-T, apparelled with skins and set with feathers. They adore the sun and believe the immortality of the soul, and that some go to heaven and others to the bowels of the earth. Towards the promontory of Baxos there is a fishing of ordinary pearls, neither so fine nor great as in the river of Palms and Margarita, nor do the natives much esteem them and value more a measure of spermaceti than a handful of pearls. So interesting, Jesus. The people of Canada make a greater account of them, for the women wear them in their ears. In many places they build their houses in form of a crescent in honor of the moon, and cover them with barks of trees or sea reeds. I wonder if all this primitive stuff really was maybe the ancient way of existing in this spiritual realm, and the Christians always call it devils, but I tend to not think so. For arms they use bows and poisoned arrows, as doth the greater part of America. Interesting that they call it America at this time, and they say that most of the people use poison arrows and bows in this America. They are much given to hunt and fish. For more of the description of the country and the manners of the people, I refer myself to the French and Spanish relations. I will only make mention of one miracle in the country, attested by the Licenciades, Ailon, Figuera, and other Spaniards of quality. 'Tis a fountain of youth, whereof the water being drunk not only mitigates all maladies, but makes the old young again, restoring decayed strength and vigor, whereof they saw the experience in an old decrepit man, quite worn out, who became vigorous and lusty, that married and got children. The Spaniards advanced not into the country, finding the people martial, bloody, and violent enemies to them, which I suppose proceeded rather from cruelties they themselves exercised than the inclinations of the people, whom the French, who used them mildly, found quite otherwise. And we see that once de Leon, leaving them by reason of their salvageness, one Fernandez Soto, which we read some books on in Tartarian Tales, in the year 1534 for booty and discovery of mines, made a voyage thither, where he committed 1,000 cruelties upon the people, and the caciques themselves, so as to at last in revenge he and all his company were massacred. Wow. Afterwards, Pamphilio de Narvaez brought a good colony into the river of Palms, where either by tempest or want the greater part perished. Then in the year 1049, some religious of Saint Benedict's order were sent thither, who had but little better success, so as the country remaining unplanted by any foreigners in the year 1562, our French went to make a conquest of it. Lo here the first discovery and taking possession of these territories by Verrazan in the name of King Francis I in the year 1524, I-524, for Admiral Chatillon, ambitious the French should have the honor and empire of those parts, had induced Charles IX to commission John Ribot d'Aiplois to go plant there at his own cost and charges, advised to the design by a Frenchman, who under the title of Levantisque and Savoyard, not a Frenchman, had before made a voyage that way to New Spain. People must have been traveling there so many times that they didn't know. It's only the education and the victors and the people that are still around that allow their history to be told, where all other histories get erased. Here we go. Ribaut, with a good party of French soldiers and mariners, first touch at the Cape of France, so named by him, in 38 degrees and the fair river May, which he so called because he arrived there on the 1st of May. There the Indians and their king gave him kind entertainment, and many presents were interchanged. Ours gave them bracelets of tin, bills, looking-glasses, and knives. They returned plumes of red feathers, baskets of twigs, finely plaited, and skins of beast, ingeniously figured. Only plaited in skins of beast. On further, they found other rivers, to which they gave the names of Seine, Somme, Loire, Charente, Garonne, Gironde, Belle, and others within less than 60 leagues off coast. Then upon the river Jordan they cast anchor, and called that place Port Royal, where they set up the arms of France, as they did in the river May upon a stone pillar. Ribaut, upon his design of planting, built a fort he called Charles Fort, in the mouth of a fair river by the natives called Tubachire, by Chenonceau, and placing it in Captain Albert with 20 soldiers and 4 pieces of ordnance, he returned for France, bringing for a show some pieces of rock streaked with gold and silver, an abundance of monkeys and paraquetos, promising to return shortly with a considerable colony of men and women. Here, Captain Albert, governor of the fort, falls in love with a daughter of one of the principal caciques, very fair and coming, whom he had procured into the fort with her father's consent, the maid holding it for a great honor to be affected by strangers. But hereupon a soldier, one of the chiefest and gallantest of the company, becomes her servant also, and by so much the more ardent, for some countenance she showed him, though in private. The captain perceiving it, he fell into such a rage he would have killed him, but for fear of mutiny amongst the soldiers, so thought better to set him a shove in a desert island 3 leagues from thence, promising to send him provisions from time to time, but not performing accordingly. The poor man was brought to such extremity he had no sustenance but oysters, tortoise eggs, birds that he took with his hand, and herbs, and was forced to creep into hollow trees for security from wild beasts, especially crocodiles, whereof there are great store. Nor did his sword and poniard stand him in small stead against them. The very apes and monkeys were vexatious to him. Sometimes for better security he climbed into trees, and they say, falling asleep one night in a tree, he tumbled down on the back of a crocodile that was come ashore for his prey. 'Twas hard to say which was most frighted, but he pursued the crocodile to the riverside, being but slow of pace by reason of his short legs and heavy body. Certain Indians fishing saw the miserable condition of this poor man, and advertised his comrades in the fort, who, incensed against their captain for this and other rigors, killed him, and fetched back the soldier half dead with hunger. Then chose another captain, and constrained by necessity to return into France, by help of the Indians, they built a little bark, nailed with wooden pines, and fitted with sails of such linen as they had, victualled with the round corn of the country they call maize, and powdered flesh, but were driven to such exigent by the way, they were saying to cast lots, who should be so unhappy as to be food for the rest. In the year 1564, Captain Landonier was sent thither with 3 vessels, who built Fort Caroline upon the river May, and thence made some inroads upon the continent. Amongst other things, he relates a flash of lightning, the most horrid and prodigious was ever heard of, for it covered and burnt above 500 acres of meadow, green and watered, roasted the fowl, and continued for 3 days without ceasing. The year following, Captain Ribaut returned thither with his son, and about 400 men and women to compose his colony, and till the soil. He was upon opening a mine of gold, and in the rock was come to find gold of the big net of needle points, about 30 leagues from the sea. But afterwards, being about to go on with the work effectually, he was unexpectedly surprised by Spaniards, who used him and his company with all cruelty and treachery imaginable. Our histories relate the passage at large, so as our forts were taken, and all our countrymen hanged or murdered. Young Ribaut escaped, came back into France, and complained to the king, who wrote to the King of Spain about it, but he only sent order to the Viceroy of New Spain to inform himself of the matter, and accordingly to do justice, which nevertheless was forgotten, and so the outrage was unsatisfied till the year 1567, that Captain Gorges nobly undertook the revenge at his own charges, and bravely drove out all the Spaniards, and demolished their forts. I shall make no further progress, for that the histories of Florida make large relations. So that is our start here to Floridian Tales. And it's a good start, I feel, because although it's a little bit all over the place, it has a good general idea of the way the history has been preserved. And a lot of the history that's taught comes from these books and these sources who are clearly biased in their research. In Florida, you got to remember, all these places, Florida is big. Like, there could be something in the middle, there could be civilizations all over. And when you see different things that they've uncovered in the oceans around Florida, this is not the savages that they're talking about that built this. These savages appear, I think, personally, to be remnants of a completely lost civilization that these Spaniards, these French, these people that claimed the land way later know nothing about, or maybe did, but weren't really writing about it or weren't told about it. But I honestly don't feel like they do. I feel like there's been ancient civilizations like just for so long on this planet that the books from those time periods may no longer exist. And the amount of wars that could have happened to turn things to rubble, the amount of water that could have receded from the coast or have come up from the coast, could have tons of things along the coast. There are so many places where you can see different lines and different things that go off into nothing. They go off into the sea. But I think that this place was a lot wider, and those probably, the land that we see and where the beaches are now, probably extended for miles out at one point in time. But the water, who knows? The controllers of our world could raise the water level if they knew the secrets that we don't, in the places that we don't. They could really do anything. So that's what I'm going to do with this Floridian Tales. I'm going to keep the imagination flowing, because I feel like history, in the way these people preserved, and the winners, the victors of our history, never really tell the stories that they aren't allowed to tell. Or if there's a hint of something, they never really tell about it. Because you will see in the coming videos, there are so many ancient artifacts found deep. Mummified bodies, stones, huge massive stone structures buried underneath like small bits of land. There are unbelievable amounts of ancient structures and tech in Florida. And people in our lifetime are like, oh, it's gonna flood, the coasts are gonna flood, while they all buy coastal properties, the rich. But none of that is going to happen. And these people know it. The secrets are coming out. They are everywhere. They are in all the places where they forbid us. If there are places that are protected, take a look there. I can't imagine the stone remnants and the things that are going to be found in the future if people continue to dig and find the urge to dig. And maybe, maybe our Floridian Tales will spread, and we can encourage more people to start looking and find some serious treasures. Because Florida was considered the land of gold. Fountains of youth, which I'm going to go into in the next episode. Different fountains all over the world and stuff that produce different compounds that are healing for the different parts of the body. This whole world was magical. Right now we're in a world where water, all our pure sources of water, are trash. They've been polluted by so many chemicals of pharmaceuticals and toxic nonsense everywhere in the air and the water and everywhere that it doesn't even resemble this. They have almost no healing power anymore. But at some point in time, everything was pristine. Everything had healing power. People knew about it. There were mines that were deep. There is so much buried below us. I think this whole world was engineered at one point in the beginning of creation by some master. And we're just building on top of it, crumbling, building back up, crumbling, growing, building back up, crumbling, growing forever. And so, there's probably a lot of history we will never find out. But I have a feeling somebody knows. These artifacts tell a story. We will continue to dig and piece it together by thinking outside the box. Let the so-called historians of the dying, failing education system continue to just go in circles and ignore things that counter what they've been force-fed their entire lives. We need to think outside the box and go for the truth by putting everything together, piecing it together and making it make sense, because their version doesn't make sense. Some of it does, but overall it doesn't, and it lacks the magic which we need to restore. And we will. So bless you all. Hope you all enjoyed this first episode. Much more to come. Florida, I'm heading your way soon. Bless you all.